Good morning. For those of you that don't know me, I'm Eric Smothers. I'm your newly elected president for the Maryland State Firemen Association. So good morning. I welcome you all this morning. So I'm going to call to order the 131st convention, the fourth session for this morning. And there's a little procession that's going to be coming this way. And hold 1 minute. So I'm going to bring out our chaplain, Charlie.
Good morning. Let us rise for prayer. Let us pray. Gracious God, we give you thanks for this fourth session, which is going to bring to a close this 131st convention. Father, we ask you to be with us as we do the business of this association, and we ask you to be with our newly elected officers, and we give thanks for those who have served the past year with dignity, and we ask them to please stay with us and be a part of our changeover as we go into this new year. Again, we thank you for the rain, even though our parade's canceled, but we ask your continued blessing to be with all of us. Be with us as some of us will be traveling home today, and give us safe travel. Those of you who will be remaining here, be safe in the wind. And all these things we ask in your gracious name. Amen.
Thank you, Charlie. Just got a couple announcements for this morning. So hot dogs and Danish will be served at noon today in room 209. The executive committee meeting today will be at 1 o'clock at the Performing Arts Center. That's been changed. That's got moved up since yesterday because of the weather. And if anyone needs any extra convention center bags or programs, they're back by the trailer at the rear of the hall. So like not to take that stuff back, so take it back to your stations and spread the wealth. So I appreciate that. So I'd like to welcome this morning our newly elected Ladies Auxiliary, standing behind you. So the president, newly elected president, is Jean Main from Frederick County. And I'm going to call upon Jean when she gets up here to introduce the rest of our officers. That's what they're telling me. So tag your it. Just hold there, man. Skip. Just hang on. Right here.
Hello, everyone. Senior Vice President Sherry Steffen. Junior Vice President Joan Kramer. Recording Secretary Holly Trigo. Treasurer Christy Grinder. Financial Secretary Jennifer Johnson. Corresponding Secretary Kay Trigo. Chaplain Robin Shore. Vice Chaplain Samantha Butterfield. Historian Cheyenne Winkelmeyer. And then Guard Paula Robinson. We have Bessie Marshall, Lori Dumbo. Conference co-chairman, is that, I'm not sure. Barb Hilton, I can't see anything down there. And conference chairman Ann Price Davis.
So let's have a round of applause for our new elected ladies auxiliary. And I also want to point out our newly elected second vice president, Charlie Simpson, standing back there, and our first vice president, Skip Carey. Thank you very much, ladies. I'll let you leave. I know you got your meeting to run, so thank you very much and best of luck to you this year. So. Yes, sir. Yeah. Mm-hmm. So at this point in time, I would call for a motion to accept our resolutions for the 131st convention. Motion by Mr. Bilger, second by Ron Block. All those in favor? Opposed? Okay. This morning, our main speaker is talking on the dangers of vacant dwellings, challenges, and solutions. Raymond Brocky was a manager of fire service as well as American Wood Council and former fire chief of Baltimore City Fire Department. Manager of Fire Service Relations, American Wood Council of Leesburg, Virginia. This presentation will review 2 recent fires occurring in vacant dwellings that killed 4 firefighters. It will outline how many hazards and pervasiveness of vacant dwelling buildings cause problems in our urban centers. The presentation will also discuss traditional ways authorities and jurisdictions have dealt with vacant structures, issues with specific focus on the fire service solutions, and will finally offer out-of-the-box ideas to mitigate the recent dwelling problems. So this time I'd like to bring to the podium Mr. Raymond O'Brien.
Good morning. I got my clicker here. Yeah, I did 23 years in the Baltimore City Fire Department before I retired. I did a couple years as chief building official for the city of Rockville, Maryland. I was asked by the ICC Fire Service Membership Council to put together a presentation based on an article that I wrote for Fire Engineering Magazine. So January 13th, 2022, St. Louis. It was the 5900 block of Cote Avenue. The vacant building, the abandoned building, was built in 1895. It had been vacant since 2004. The city of St. Louis condemned it in 2019 because of multiple code violations. They had an out-of-state owner. The owner actually lived in Arkansas. It had previous fires in it, and during this fire, it had a building collapse which killed one firefighter, Benjamin Polston. Fast forward 11 days later, it was 2005 South Stricker Street. This building was built in 1900. It had been vacant since 2008. It also had multiple code violations and had been condemned by the city in 2010. It also had an out-of-state owner. The owner lived in Pennsylvania. There was a serious fire there in 2015 that actually was a partial collapse that injured seriously 3 firefighters. There was another fire in 2016. During this fire, South Stricker Street, it also suffered a building collapse. 3 firefighters were killed. The South Stricker Street house was 3 stories, 1,500 square feet. It was third from the corner. Now, if you look at the pictures, it looks second from the corner because the house on the corner collapsed years before in the 90s. It's type 3 construction, which meant it had masonry walls. It had wood framing interior. There was a roof scuttle, but it was opened in 2015. It's been open since 2015 because they vented through that roof scuttle in that previous fire. The owners claim that the foundation of 2005 Stricker was affected by the collapse that occurred in 1997. And there's some evidence of that because the foundation was masonry, but part of it was poured concrete after the fact to shore it up. It also had it had I-beams that connected the B, C, and D sides. So there was definitely evidence of structural degradation. This is what the first arriving unit saw when they pulled up, engine 14. So the similarities between these 2 fires were stark. The St. Louis fire, they had made entry, they had gone to the 2nd floor. They noticed that the heat and the smoke and intensity was too great, so they called everybody to evacuate, which they did, except firefighter Polson couldn't get out. In the Stricker Street fire, same deal. They knocked the fire on the 1st floor, started to go to the 2nd floor when the top 2 floors collapsed. But both these fires involved collapses. They were both in dwellings that were over 100 years old. They were vacant for many years, both of them. They both had previous fires. Both had absentee landlords or owners that lived out of state. And both killed firefighters. So the problem with these vacant dwellings, and it's in communities big and small, it's not just big cities, is that fire departments are left to deal with these properties when the properties fall into disrepair. I mean, literally in Baltimore City, we had vacant properties that were vacant so long that they actually had trees growing out of them. Now, the city of St. Louis listed that they have 10,000 vacant properties. The city of Baltimore says they have 17,000. I guarantee you that the numbers are more than double in both these cities. These are just the houses that register as vacant, not ones that are actually vacant. They are frequently unsecured. They have bad roofs, rotting floor assemblies because of water intrusion. And they are magnets for everything you don't want in your community. For homeless, for drug dealers, drug addicts. In Baltimore City, in West Baltimore, when I was in West Baltimore, the drug dealers would use these vacant properties to store their drugs in, so that if their house got raided, they wouldn't have any drugs on their own property. And they set up booby traps in those for police that sometimes we fell into because, we'd fight the fire. Vacant buildings in Baltimore burn at twice the national average. And many of them, the Baltimore Sun reported between 2017 and 2022 that there were 95 reported instances of repeat fires in vacant buildings. Some addresses had as many as 4 different fires. I always say that your average row home can take 1 fire. It can't take more than 1 fire. So the other problem is in Baltimore City and other places, ghost houses. What's a ghost house? This is a house on West Pratt Street. Okay, it sold in 2006 for $26,000. It was declared vacant by the city the same year. It's presently valued at $7,000. The debt attached to this house because of unpaid water bills and taxes is $100,000, and the estimated renovation cost is $130,000. So you would have to buy this home for $7,000, put another $130,000 in it, pay the back taxes. So you're talking about $250,000 for a house that has little to no value. So what was the Baltimore City response to the line of duty fatal fire? They had no official policy before that. So they came up with a new vacant property fire policy, which prohibits firefighters from going inside condemned or vacant buildings unless there is a quote unquote credible report of someone trapped, such as a witness who saw someone enter. But they don't really define credible. And firefighters can be disciplined if they break this protocol. It's really to me, it's a trap. It's a disciplinary trap for firefighters. So for vacant dwellings that aren't condemned, firefighters must wait for a report about the conditions in the back of the building, which could reveal dangers unseen from the front. So that's their new policy on vacant dwelling fires. So on November 27th, the fire department, the BCFD, responds to this vacant dwelling. It had been previously burned and was marked by new placards that I'll talk about in a little bit. So as crews were arriving on the scene, they were ordered exterior operations only. Nobody got hurt. They actually wound up rescuing a couple of dogs and cats and walking people out of the building. So, crisis averted, right? The new policy is working. Okay, December 3rd of last year, they responded to a vacant, or what they thought was a vacant building in West Baltimore. The crews battled the blade from the inside, but they evacuated because of the structural damage they realized. The firefighters had it under control by 1:20 a.m. They didn't receive any reports of anybody trapped. There was no credible report of anybody trapped. And the building was not even classified as vacant, but they felt it was because it looked like it was vacant. So noon the next day, the person calls up and said, "Hey, my brother was in there," when it went up in flames. And they went back and they found James Craig Jr., 45, dead on the second floor. He had rented the place for his demolition business, which was on the first floor, and then he was living above it, sort of like a live-work unit, but it was really an illegal change of use. You're not supposed to stay there, but that's another problem. So this is what the Sun paper read the next day. His brother said he easily walked up the stairs and spotted his brother's body before reaching the top. And now his family is asking why firefighters couldn't do the same and potentially save his brother's life. So that's why these fires, you can't have a blanket policy for every fire. People like the aggressiveness of the city fire department when they have a fire and they need something, and they criticize the fire department in its absence. So a board of inquiry was formed, not about that fire, it was about the fire on Stricker Street. It was held at Under Armour headquarters. It was, NIOSH was included along with representatives of the city. In that report that came out afterwards, they had 36 findings, 36 recommendations. I don't have time to go over all of them, but I'm going to hit a couple of them. Now, I put this rubric up there, okay, and probably it's hard to see, but down the left-hand column are recommendations, blanket recommendations, and across the top are reports that were done. And from left to right, Facet's report was in November of 2021, and then they had a couple of reports from near misses on Glover Street, the death of James Bethia back in 2014, a couple more near misses, and the fire that happened on Stricker Street. And you can see there's an X in every box where you see each report making the same recommendations. So you see a lot of very similar recommendations across these reports. And I can tell you that not a single recommendation has ever been followed through on by the Baltimore City Fire Department. They pay for these reports, but So one of their findings is that after the plywood was removed from the front door, significant fire conditions were present on all 3 floors. The report from the Charlie side supported that the building was fully involved. There was also signs of previous fire and structural instability, and yet the crew still went in. So they recommended that they utilize NFPA 1500, which is the standard on fire department occupational safety and health, to ensure a proper size-up is completed prior to the interior firefighting operations. And they should have a 360-degree scene size-up, which is a challenge in the city if you have a row home in the middle of a long block. You know, you don't get the luxury of walking 360 degrees around. That's why that side Charlie report is so important. They said that they needed to conduct a better risk versus benefit analysis, and it should be an ongoing assessment throughout the entire fire. Consider training that promotes situational awareness, and develop a standard operating procedure. Basically, they were saying that even if there were people inside the fire, and there were people reported trapped, that it was not survivable because it was fully involved on all 3 floors. They also said that they needed a program to placard these buildings. I'll talk a little bit about placarding later. There actually was a placarding program that was started in 2010, but it wasn't politically popular. Politicians and folks from the neighborhood didn't like these red X's on the buildings because it's basically saying, hey, this is a bad neighborhood. They're saying they need to put in a program that would that firefighters know, give them a visual cue that this building is unsafe to enter. So we called it Code X-Ray to warn them, and also to populate the CAD system on which properties had previous fires. They also said they needed to work with the city and about vacant dwellings and collaborate with other city agencies, most notable the building department, and develop an accurate list of vacant buildings. That's kind of hard to do because, you know, vacant buildings in the city is a very transient population, is a moving target. So, you know, what's occupied today could be vacant tomorrow. There's no policy in place to address emergency operations at or within vacant dwellings, and they need a strong policy on that. Now, this is one thing that they actually did start to move on. The incident command technician, Battalion Chief 3 on this fire, he was the incident commander, said he was sort of overwhelmed by the situation. He had multiple people talking to him at the same time. He was only on scene less than 5 minutes before the collapse happened. There were already crews inside. He was unable to read his mobile data terminal, and all that led to he couldn't even do a technical worksheet. So they conducted PARs, and when they conducted a PAR and people didn't answer, they just went to the next unit. They didn't follow up on those units. So they wanted to put in, they're saying a single individual couldn't manage the scene properly because the responsibilities of incident command start at dispatch. And here, if your incident commander is driving, trying to navigate his route there, he can't read the mobile terminal, it's hard to listen to the radio. So they're saying that there should be an incident command technician created. They said that because of this task saturation, that he missed critical information, observations, and actions. And actually, that technology actually creates additional demand on the incident commander. Actually, in New York City, I had dinner up there with their chief of ops, and they have a tablet that's an incident command app on their tablet where they can see every unit there in real time because they have AVLs and all their apparatus. They can click on it, see who's working. They can conduct PARs that way. It's a really neat app. So if you know anybody from the FDNY, it was homegrown within the FDNY. To me, there's no vendor that makes it. But so this recommendation, the good news is they said we're going to create aides in this pilot program. Okay, so you're going to have more eyes, more hands, so that person is going to be the chief's aide. And just for reference, battalion chiefs in Baltimore City had aides until the late 70s. They gave up their aides for $700 more a year. That was why they run alone now. But they're going to put it in now. That's the good news. The bad news is that these positions haven't been funded. So they're taking lieutenants and captains that are off duty and bringing them back on overtime. And if it's not budgeted, I fear that these are going to go away once there's enough distance from this fire that they can kind of slowly do away with this quote unquote pilot program. They also had a finding that the incident command system, ICS, wasn't utilized to its full potential. It led to confusion and self-assignment. So people were freelancing. There were periods of time when there was no safety officer because they took the Charlie side command. It was just really confusion. So they want to ensure that every incident commander is trained and familiar with incident command system. To be a chief officer in Baltimore City, you have to have all those ICS courses from the National Fire Academy. The bad news is they receive very little continuing education on that, and there's this prevailing theory in the city fire department that you only use ICS on big incidents, complex incidents. So they're saying that it should be utilized on minor incidents to normalize its use and also to give the incident commanders more practice with ICS. They were talking again about their operational risk assessment and its key components. Here's one that was slightly disturbing to me. The members reported being unfamiliar with RIT equipment because it wasn't readily available to them. It is amazing to me that in the city of Baltimore, only truck companies and the rescue carry RIT bags. Engine companies don't. Engine companies outnumber the truck companies and the rescue more than 2 to 1. So you're saying that most of the fire department doesn't even have a RIT bag, and you can't get familiar with something you don't have. So they had a recommendation that they provide each suppression unit with their own RIT bag and training to go with it. They identified several training needs, the capabilities of the portable radios to include the live use of emergency activation button during training, ensure RIT training. They say that the Fire Communications Bureau should do ride-alongs so they understand what suppression units go through. Train members on proper radio discipline. There was a big problem with a lot of people talking at the same time. And they had what they call stealth rejects. So if you and I queued up our mic at the same time, one of us would get through, the other one wouldn't, but we wouldn't know that we didn't get through. So they're saying they needed training on radio discipline. And then the all famous culture, always culture. Although there is no evidence that the following recommendation could have prevented these fatalities, interviewed members expressed their concern regarding the competitive culture within the fire department. The perceived culture often creates a sense of urgency in execution of duties. So I think this is a funny recommendation because it says there's no evidence to say this would have made a difference, but we're going to say it would have made a difference. But what it's saying is that everybody wanted to race the fire and they wanted to go in and put it out, and they didn't want to run the risk of doing a proper size up and have some other company run in with the hose and put the fire out and then rub it in their face and to put the fire out. So they had recommendations about culture, define and advocate for a cultural change within the department related to safety while maintaining an aggressive approach. So it's saying we're too aggressive, so let's be less aggressive, but then we want to stay aggressive. Incorporate leadership, management, supervision, accountability, and personal responsibility into the push for culture change. So that was a really quick version of the after action report. It was over 300 pages. Like I said, I made 36 recommendations, 36 findings. I just went over the ones that I thought that would be most applicable to this group. So the traditional solutions by communities, and let me urge that the vacant dwelling problem is a societal issue. It is not just a fire department issue. The fire service cannot solve the vacant fire problem in this country. It has to mitigate its hazards because it is a societal issue. It touches a lot of things when it comes to crime and urban blight and drugs and mental illness and that kind of thing. So traditionally, communities have tried violations. They've tried boarding these up on their own, condemnation, seizing the property, tax sales, and demolition. Now, the biggest barrier to accountability is transparency of title. You know, we don't know who own these things. The other barrier to accountability is service, a process that I'll talk about. Owners' apathy. They have these properties until they are no longer profitable and they just walk away from them, and then they're left for city and counties to deal with. They're valueless. I talked about the ghost houses that literally it would cost more to buy them than they're even worth by a lot. Judgment-proof owners, you know, you can write them up and you can try to sue them, but they don't have any assets to seize. Overtaxed judicial system, there's no dedicated docket that these properties can go through and expedite property seizure. And there's limited budgets. The city law office only has so much money to prosecute or sue these owners. So transparency of title and service. Here's the problem. Most of these kind of homes are owned by an LLC, a limited liability corporation. When I was the fire marshal for Baltimore City, I tried to write violations on these, and I couldn't because I could never find out who owns them, because they're owned by an LLC. And an LLC is supposed to have a resident agent. That means someone who represents the LLC within the state. The problem is that a lot of these resident agents, because the information doesn't have to be updated every year. If you go to STAT, the database, some of these resident agents were dead, they were retired, they had moved away. So if you don't know where to send the violation, you cannot give them notice. So due process is just a fancy legal way of saying notice and opportunity. That if you're accused of a crime, that you are served notice of it, and you're given the opportunity to either correct it or defend yourself. Well, if this LLC lists the vacant property or a PO box as its address, which many do, they actually list their own vacant property, how do you serve notice on the owner to hold them accountable? Like I said, mailing addresses are not required on deeds. Owner apathy, judgment-proof owners, limited liability companies are meant just for that. Limited liability. You can own an LLC, and if someone sues you, they can only get the assets that are in the LLC. Well, these owners the only asset in the LLC is the valueless property itself. So even if you won a judgment on the LLC, you would inherit a property that actually would cost you more than it would be worth. Tax sale, because of ghost homes, nobody wants to buy these homes. Condemnation and seizure, the largest owner of vacant properties in the city of Baltimore is the city of Baltimore, because they seize these properties and they can't do anything with them. So there's no dedicated docket for these seizure proceedings. They're long, they're burdensome. You know, normal foreclosure is against a person, and you can't get the person. Demolition, they tried in the city back in the 90s especially, but it is expensive. To demo a single row home costs anywhere from $15,000 to $35,000 a piece, depending on its size. There's 2 stories, there's 3 stories. If you have to shore up the house next to it, because they were tearing down properties and then occupied places were falling over after they demoed a property. If you have to shore up the property, that $15,000 to $35,000 balloons to $50,000 or $60,000. And remember, I said in the city of Baltimore, they had 17,000 registered vacant properties, not to mention the ones that weren't registered. So you're talking hundreds of millions of dollars. But there are solutions to the ghost house issue. What the city needs to do is to clear the debt, sell to qualified developers, and what they call in rem foreclosures. In rem foreclosures is you're basically suing the property. The way a normal foreclosure is, you're suing the person. It's called in personam proceeding or foreclosure. You change it to basically you're suing the property, not the owner, and you can do it. Now, vacant dwellings, Hopkins did a study that vacant dwellings cost the city of Baltimore about $100 million a year, in boarding them up, cleaning them, cutting grass, rat abatement, 911 calls. They said if they did these solutions to ghost houses, they could flip it from $100 million of cost to $100 million of revenue. But nobody has ever mentioned that. Now, Another solution could be criminal penalties for negligent owners. Bad actors who have, there is precedence in the law for holding a homeowner criminally responsible for their actions or inactions, like lead paint abatement. People have gone to jail because of that. Nuisance houses, drug houses, that kind of thing. So there is precedence in the law. It would have to be narrowly scoped. You don't want to catch people that aren't bad actors and just have fallen on hard times. And prison time would be a viable deterrent. Now, one thing you have to do is try to what they call pierce the corporate veil. Remember I told you LLC, the owners are basically liable for owning things in the LLC. You can't go after their personal assets. Well, if you could pierce the corporate veil, you could go after their personal assets. It has precedence in the law. The problem is in Maryland, it hasn't been done, and it hasn't been done successfully in the courts in 50 years. So I just, in Maryland, to pierce the corporate veil is to prevent fraud or enforce a paramount equity. There's a test that formulates to balance the policy of limited shareholder liability with the interest of serving justice. Adoption of a more equitable approach in piercing the corporate veil would be many factors analysis. And these are just some theories in piercing the corporate veil I'm not going to go into. So there are legal changes that are needed. You need a dedicated docket for just seizing these homes and rent process I talked about. You need transparency of title. If you're going to have an LLC, they should list the members on the deed. Alternative service, expedited seizure process, criminal penalties, probate reform. Some of these folks inherit these houses. They live out of state. The house has been vacant for years. Their great-grandfather dies, their grandfather dies. They inherit it, and they do nothing with it. So there would be legal changes needed to say, hey, listen, before you can close the estate, you either have to sign the house over or get it up to code, that kind of thing. Now, typical fire department solutions for vacant dwellings and abandoned buildings in general, one is pre-planning. Fire departments go out there and they pre-plan for these buildings so they know which ones they can go in and which ones they can't. Fire code has provisions about how vacant dwellings should be secured, and NFPA 1 and both IFC have code provisions on that. NFPA 1620 is the pre-planning standard that everybody's supposed to pre-plan. Placarding, I talked about, was one of the recommendations, and they have it in NFPA 1. Maryland is an NFPA 1 state, so if you've adopted Appendix E and NFPA 1, then you have a placarding standard. Baltimore City is the only jurisdiction in Maryland that goes by the IFC, and that's in Section 311. Also, you could change tactics, and I talked about the Baltimore City approach to not go in unless there, no entry, reported people trapped, that kind of thing. So this is the IFC code. This is right out of the code book. Basically, it says that you have the authority under this code to regulate abandoned buildings, and the only code section is this one about the removal of combustibles. It has to be secured, and you have to take all the combustibles out of it. This is what it says in NFPA 1, basically the same thing as in IFC. You have to clean it out, and you have to secure it. Now, pre-planning must cover the following areas. Now, when I was a company officer, I really never thought the pre-plan abandoned buildings. It just never occurred to me because nobody was in there, in theory. But now, in hindsight, I think they are the most important to pre-plan because of the physical and site considerations, life safety considerations, water supply and fire protection systems or lack thereof, and hazardous materials. Okay, and under the pre-planning, you have to know the last type of occupancy, so you know the kind of things you could expect. So this would be for commercial abandoned buildings, which there are a ton of them in East and West Baltimore. Open shafts. These buildings are famous for open shafts because when a building is abandoned, especially a commercial building, a lot of times the last owner will cannibalize the parts in the building that they can reuse or sell. And oftentimes that's the elevator or the elevator penthouse. So you'll have open shafts, you'll have pits and holes due to removed equipment. You'll have structural degradation. I told you we had abandoned buildings that had trees growing out of them because that's how much water intrusion. Exposed structural members, penetrations and barriers that allow normal fire travel, combustible contents. We had a vacant dwelling in East Baltimore, Highlandtown, where we went in there. Luckily it was a small fire. We knocked it quick, but it had over 500 used tires thrown in there and dumped. These are magnets for illegal dumping because people can go inside and kind of do it clandestinely. And if those tires would have gone up, it'd have been a nightmare. Maze-like configurations. In Oakland, a couple years ago, I think it was called the Ghost Ship. It was a warehouse that people turned into these artist studios, and it caught fire, killed several people. It was a legal change of use, but they had cut it up into like these little cubicles. And we found a similar situation in East Baltimore where people, sort of squatted in these places, and they would build these little petitions between the cubicles, and the petitions would be made of cardboard or plywood, that kind of thing. Blocked or damaged stairwells you have to look and take note of. Potential for delay in discovery of fire. If they're vacant, nobody's there to see it until it becomes too big of a fire. Potential for a multi-room fire on arrival, and exposure issues from nearby structures. Now, placarding has been one thing brought up. This is what the ICC says about placarding in the IFC. Basically, if it's a vacant dwelling, you have a box. If it has some structural degradation, but not too bad, it's 1 slash in it. And if it has 2 slashes, if it has X in the box, then you shouldn't go in under any condition. One thing about placarding, I talked about the recommendation for the culture change in the fire department, that people want to rush in and really not do a proper size up and go into places that they probably shouldn't go into. Well, this placard would sort of give that company officer, that engine company, sort of, cover. Like, hey, I couldn't go in. It was placarded, that kind of thing. But the problem with placarding is that it gets torn down, it gets obscured. At 3 o'clock in the morning, I wasn't looking for placards. I wasn't looking for stickers saying "Save my pet" and that kind of thing. This is just the NFPA version of the placard. Now, change the tactics. It sounds good, but every fire is different, and people fight the fires based on their training and experience. So there's not a cookie cutter, one size fits all for how to fight a vacant dwelling. What if they have occupants, in the adjacent dwelling, which they did in Baltimore, in Stricker Street, it was an occupied dwelling right next door. And, people reported people trapped. Is a building ever truly vacant? When you have a homeless people issue, someone had to set the fire. The utilities are turned off unless it was struck by lightning. Like I said, this is what they saw. You can see there's a little glow around the plywood. And when they pulled the plywood, it was fully involved. So in St. Louis, the chief there was asked why the firefighters went in, and he said the following quote: "The St. Louis City Fire Department does a job every day in buildings that many departments consider buildings we shouldn't enter. We know that people use these homes to stay warm, to provide protection against the different environments." And this is the same situation around the country. It's not just here. So there's challenges and opportunities. Okay, the fire department challenges and opportunities is better reporting and documentation. Fire reporting is notoriously incomplete. And 3 o'clock in the morning, after you've been on fire all night, you're wet, you're cold, you're hungry, the last thing you feel like doing is sitting down and doing a very thorough and complete report. And that's natural. I mean, at one time I went to a firehouse and I saw a sticky note above the desk that said how to do the fewest clicks on the NIFRS report to get it to go through. So we need to do better reporting. We need to use the CAD system better. We need to target public education and homeless outreach. So the challenge, like I said, is fire service reporting is notoriously poor, and most places don't fully utilize their CAD. And they don't do it out of laziness or apathy. It's because it takes somebody to populate the CAD. And usually the people that populate it are call takers and dispatchers who are also very busy and understaffed. But there's an opportunity here if you want to think out of the box. We could hire civilians, trained in data collection and data entry to do the reporting for us. They would just get the information from the company officer or the incident commander. They would do their own sort of investigation, that kind of thing, and then have them populate the CAD. And then, to me, the CAD system is the best vehicle to warn firefighters, hey, there's been a previous fire here. Hey, there's structural degradation. There's a collapse hazard. Because if you hear that while you're responding, that resonates with you a lot more than looking for a placard on a wall somewhere. But the homeless problem and the vacant dwelling problem are intertwined. You can't talk about one and not talk about the other. And the homeless have exploded. And here are some examples. Homeless-related fires in Portland, Oregon increased 445% from 803 in 2019 to 4,300 in 2021. That's the worst case scenario. In Frisco, it's up 75%, homeless-related fires. People, they burn stuff to keep warm. They burn stuff to cook food. Sometimes they burn insulation off of copper wire because they scrap the copper and they cause the fire. This is what the Portland Fire Commissioner said. The lack of shelter and affordable housing has led to an unfortunate reality where thousands of people are living on the streets and must resort to starting fires to stay warm and cook food. And this is just the LA fire problem. There was a Scarball fire that was traced to cooking in a vacant fire in a ravine. And also the homeless are actually using fire as weapons against each other. They'll burn where you live to get back at you for some perceived or real slight and that kind of thing. They launched a fleet of, LA Fire Department launched a fleet of fast response units. So they're basically like pickup trucks with a tank on them, and they traverse the city, they patrol, and that way they can get to a fire quickly to put out fires in their incipient stage, and they're not taking a big, $1 million fire engine out on these calls. Taylor, South Carolina, they started homeless outreach to provide fire safety education, especially in the winter when they're trying to stay warm. And that fire safety education is geared towards the homeless. You don't talk to the homeless about smoke alarms and that kind of thing because they don't have electric where they are. You think outside the box. They actually had a fire safety program geared towards the homeless in Taylor, South Carolina. These are some of the things. The safety messages for housed individuals miss the mark for those folks. And they're not going to see social media and that kind of thing. So they just did outreach and survey of the homeless. Let me move through some of these. So anyway, the vacant dwelling problem, to conclude, as we're getting ready to run short on time, is a societal issue. So now the fire department can advocate for these legal changes that are needed, but it's really up to the elected officials. Traditional solutions have not worked. We cannot demolition our way out of this problem. You can't take down all these homes. We don't have enough money to fix them all up. And once again, the demo doesn't occur in the fire department, it occurs in the building department. There are legal challenges and opportunities, and there are fire department challenges and opportunities. Political will be the toughest barrier to this. Politicians like placards. They're cheap, they're easy, they make it seem like we're doing something. But if they put their money where their mouth is and hired civilian reporters and CAD populators, it wouldn't take a ton. That would be a more meaningful long-term solution. But getting politicians to do that is a big challenge. But this is why it's worth it. For Paul Buttram, Kelsey Sadler, Kenneth Lacayo, and Benjamin Polson, these were the firefighters whose lives were lost in January of 2022, sorry. Thank you for your attention.
I want to say, Ray, thank you very much for what you did. There's a lot of good information in there, so I hope everybody takes that information back home to their home station. And we have a presentation for you. Right here. So we got a picture. Okay, the Ladies Auxiliary would like to make a special presentation to MSFA. Rosa, you back there?
Good morning, everyone. On behalf of the Ladies Auxiliary, we would like to make a donation to the Cancer Committee. We've been doing lots of raffles to make this money. We're making a check for $2,380. Okay.
Thank you. So I'm going to introduce our new leadership here. So I guess I'll start off. So I want to say again, thank you for your vote of confidence. I think where we're going to go this year is we really need to work on our recruitment retention. And what I've asked each member of an appointed officer for MSFA is when you go back to your station, whom is that person that's going to fill your shoes? If each and every one of us brings one new person into the firehouse, we grow. We're all fighting for the same individuals. I don't care whether you're a volunteer or on the career side. We're all trying to reach out to the same individuals. And, I understand when, as you go through, and I've heard it, it's like, Eric, well, we train people and then they leave, or then they go and they get a career job. Well, to me, if we did that, we've done our job, because that keeps the career side building. It brings people into the fire service, and if we're lucky, we'll retain them. I understand that we're busy, our lives are busier, our training requirements have grown, and that puts a detriment and it makes it stressful for the families, between the husband, the wife, the girlfriend, the boyfriend, and all the other ancillary duties that we do. Our plate becomes platters. We're a lot busier in today's society than we've ever been. We need to reach out to our younger generation. If you've been here the last couple of days, you've heard about the next generation. And then we have that generational gap between the young folks and the older senior folks of the department. We've got to bridge that gap and bring these two elements together. Yes, you have the experience up here. These folks are trying to learn, and sometimes the folks up here don't like to listen to the folks down here. We've got to change that mindset. And if we can do that, we will grow. So I'm asking each and every one of you to take that back to your stations and help us grow, including our auxiliary. I was just downstairs speaking to our auxiliaries. They're in dire straits too. A lot of those ladies and men downstairs help us buy the apparatus that we're riding in. They help us do what we do on a daily basis. So we need them too. And I ask them to do the same thing. Bring one new person into your fire station. And if each and every one of us do that, we will grow. So we got to start somewhere. It's a little different in how we think about doing that. You can't just let somebody say, well, no, that's not my charge. No, that's, the membership's job to do that, or that's the recruiter's job to do that. We are all recruiters of the fire service. Look at what you walk around in today. How many of you are wearing your company's uniform, your company patch? The public sees that. So they respect what we do. Bring one new person along, and we will grow. So I'm going to introduce our newly elected first vice president, Mr. Skip Carey.
Good morning. A couple of unique things that happen in one's life. You find a perfect woman and you marry her, you have children, and they bless you with grandchildren. And one of the next things is you join a fire department. And then you decide you want to do a little more than crawl down that hallway to that back bedroom. And you get involved in the administration. And then one of the really, really neat things is you decide to run for the office of your state association. And a good friend tells you, I won't tell you no, and I won't tell you yes, but I'll help you all I can. And because of his help, you end up here where I am, at this booth, talking to what is the most unique group of people I think we have in the state. And that's people that give of their life, their time, and even their family's time to support the citizens of our state. To be your first vice president, it rates right up there with the other unique honors that I said that occurred. But it's not my, or Eric, or Charles' association. It's not the Board of Trustees, of which several are sitting down in the first row. It's association. It's your association. Without you, it doesn't exist. I'm here to help you in any given way you see fit. In the directory, you find how to get up with me. I've got bad hearing. Sometimes the hearing aids and the Bluetooth don't work, and I might miss your call. So leave a message, a voicemail, and I'll get back with you. Thank you for allowing me the distinct privilege and honor of serving you. Thank you.
Thank you, Skip. And now for your newly elected second vice president, Mr. Charlie Simpson.
Thank you, Mr. President. Good morning. I'm supposed to keep it short because I understand that the Danishes and the hot dogs are going to be available at noon. So I'll keep it short. Hey, it's my pleasure to serve you. It'll be my pleasure to be here and be available as second vice president of this great association. Thank you all.
Okay. And let's see here. I'm going to bring out Mitch Folk, financial secretary for the coming year.
Thank you, Mr. President. Thank you for your support. That's the definition of short. Thank you.
You're following the script. And then our new chaplain, you've seen him before, and hiding back there. But come on out, Chief Chaplain.
Well, it must have been one heck of a party last night. Thank you again for re-electing me as Chief Chaplain. I want to remind everyone, do not wait until the end of the year to submit your deceased members for the memorial. Get them in as soon as possible after they pass. And if you do not have a chaplain who is trained, I have a great offer. MSFA is paying for the Essentials class, and there'll be a class August 18th and 19th in Lonaconee, Maryland. So please go on, have your chaplain go to the MSFA Special Programs website and have them sign up for the Essentials class. Have a great trip home, safe trip.
Have a new trustee, Mr. Robbie Blackston.
Thank you. Good morning. Look forward to working with everyone. Represent the trustees, great group of people. If you need anything, our information will be in the book. Look forward to a great year. Thank you.
And then we also have another trustee, newly elected, Teresa Collins. I haven't seen Teresa this morning. Oh, she's standing back there. Teresa, you want to come up and say a few words?
Good morning. I just want to thank everyone for their support, and along with Robbie and the other trustees, if anyone needs anything, please reach out to any of us. Thank you.
And then for final remarks, if you would give our past president, Mr. Ben Kurtz, it's been an honor to work and walk behind this guy for the last year. And you don't realize all the moving parts behind the scenes until you start walking these chairs. And this was a man that I could always depend on. If you had a question, he was there to answer it. Would take a phone call regardless of the day or night. So if you would give a big round of applause for his farewell, past President Ben Kurtz.
Good morning. It's been an honor and a privilege to serve as your president this past year. And I would not be in this position without all of you. Those who have served committee chairs, committee members, officers, past presidents, executive committee, thank you. I had a great team, as Eric alluded to, with having Eric and Skip, and now you have Charlie coming on. The MSFA is great hands. You try to improve the association when you come into this office, and I know that it will be in great hands having the leadership of Eric Smothers, Skip Carey, and Charlie Simpson. Thank you all, and have a good day.
And our newly elected Ms. Fire Prevention, Maddie Moore from Cecil County.
Hi, good morning. I am Maddie Moore. I am your new MSFA Miss Fire Prevention 2023-2024. I just want to thank everyone that came to the contest and that has supported us this year. If you would like me to attend any events, just let me know and I can give you a business card. Thank you.
Maddie, I want to say thank you. We're going to be out of the gate running. If you haven't spoken to our Fire Marshal Brian Geraci, he's getting ready to retire at the end of the year. But one of his charges is that we've got to make it safer for our citizens. The deaths in Maryland have to come down. And these young ladies and young fire chiefs are going to help us do that. So if you could help me, help them, that would be awesome. Let's work on trying to get our deaths down in the state. So Maddie, I just want to give you a convention mug and say thank you, and I look forward to working with you. And the first runner-up from my county, so she and I is going to get on a big road trip. I already told her parents that, I'm going to steal them from her a couple weekends. That might give them a little bit of a rest. So Miss Ashley Dvorak.
Hello, everybody. I'm Ashley Dvorak. As Eric said, I'm formerly Miss Frederick. I am now going to be your first runner-up. I look forward to meeting a lot of you over the next year. And remember, when you get home, to clean your grills before you use them. Thank you.
And Ashley, I have a mug for you too. So we're going to make a lot of road trips together. So. All right, we're going to keep it moving because I know the hot dogs are waiting. So I'm going to introduce the executive board for the coming year. My chairman, also from Frederick County, and you've probably seen him around here for a long time. Familiar face, Mr. Clarence Chip Jewell. Vice Chairman Roger Sager. Roger's working. He's coming up the steps. Committee member Mark Bilger. Ronald Block. Steve Cox. Timothy Dayton. Bill Faust, Lee Lutz. I called Bill. He's coming. Lee Lutz? Oh, he's coming. Okay. Robert Phillips. Doug Simpkins. Randy Smith. Buddy Sutton. And our ex officio will be Ben Kurtz. And we have a new chairperson or chairman seat that you voted on, and that's Dale Fishak. Is Dale in the room? And Dale will be representing Washington County. Our assistant secretaries, okay. So, all right, so Ben. All right. You can install. Okay. Thank you, gentlemen. Yep, they're telling me to exit. I'm listening to the curtain and then over here, so sorry for the confusion. Thank you, guys. Look forward to working with you. All right, my assistant officers for the coming year, Miss Jean Aaron, Assistant Secretary, Shirley Caputo, Jonathan Dayton, Michelle Mallon, Assistant Treasurer, George Cross, Wally Dollinson, Robert Jacobs, Assistant Financial Secretary, Bobby Aaron, Chaplains, Frederick Barr, Deacon Charlie Barnhart, Reverend Harry Hetz, Marvin Jackson, Thomas Morgan, Frank Roth, and Rabbi Tenenbaum. Our attorney will be Michael Farlow. Our parliamentarian will be Richard Brooks and Ken Bush. And Ben, if I could get you to come out and I'm going to bring Ben back out for our installation and swearing in of our officers. Past President Kurtz.
Ladies and gentlemen, if you're ready to take the oath of office, please raise your right hand. Sorry, Frank. Repeat after me, using your name in place of mine. I, Ben Kurtz, do solemnly swear to uphold the Constitution and bylaws of the Maryland State Firemen Association. I shall faithfully carry out the duties of the office of which I've been appointed. Upon completion of my term, I will turn over all records, equipment, and monies to my duly appointed successor. I will do my utmost to preserve, protect, and promote the Maryland State Firemen Association. So help me God. Ladies and gentlemen, I declare you duly installed. Let's give a round of applause for our appointed officers for 2023-2024. Thank you.
I'm going to bring out Ron Sarnicki for our final convention report. Ron?
Well, good morning, everybody. Glad that we're at that last day. Be able to talk a little bit about what's been happening over the course of the week. I do have to start with an apology. I could not be here for the beginning of the convention. I was at the NFPA meeting for the Fallen Firefighters Foundation. Bad part is traveling. The good part, it was Vegas. So it was a nice trip. I don't know, Vegas, Ocean City, I wasn't sure which would be better, but it's good to be here and see everybody. A couple of things relative to the convention. Obviously, you've heard by now the executive committee is going to meet this afternoon instead of tomorrow morning. So it'll be 1 o'clock in the PAC. We have arranged for food to be out in the hallway. The food that would have been used for the trophy presentations tomorrow, since we canceled the parade, and for the executive committee will be served starting at noon, so that hour break before the executive committee session, you'll be able to get a free lunch. So never say there isn't a free lunch out there. And get a free lunch and then start back with the meeting. So the convention has gone fairly well. I have to say that I'm so pleased to see that the committee that worked so hard all year was able to function without me. That's always a good sign or a bad sign, but that's been part of our succession plan for a long time, is to put people in place to run the convention, no matter who's the chair. So some of the numbers, we had 1,500 people at the memorial service and opening ceremonies, which is about par for what we normally do. We had about 110 at the prayer breakfast this morning, so I heard that people like that. They like the food and location. And we had 1,000 people at Jolly Roger take advantage of the rides. So that's right where we were last year. The food, number of people eating food there was down a little bit, but we're going to readjust as we go there. Of course, all of the exhibits were sold out. So I know that the exhibit committee, along with Kate and Lynn, did a lot to ensure that all of our exhibitors had an opportunity to show their wares. That is what pays for our convention. And so we try to do what we can to make it a good experience for them. We are looking at what to do next year. There's been a lot of discussion about only having the exhibits open 2 days and maybe closing down earlier in the afternoon. Our vendors feel that the morning sessions are the most productive in the number of people that are coming into the exhibit hall. And obviously in the afternoons, if the weather's nice, people are heading to the beach. And I walked over yesterday and it was pretty dead after 1 o'clock. So we are going to take a look at the exhibits and see how that works. We do try to get input from all of our exhibitors to get some valuable insight from them. They do a lot of shows and bring a lot of ideas to us. Just a couple other things. I want to let you know that we are up for renewal for the contract here in Ocean City. So the 3-year contract we signed ends this year. So we'll be in negotiations with the convention center in the town relative to future conventions. And we will be hosting a critique probably at Odington. I've got to work that out with Wiley Donaldson on when we do that. But we really would like your input. If there's something you saw or something you think could be better or change or do differently, please reach out to us, email us, call. Let us know what your thoughts are, because it is your convention and we want to make sure it meets your needs as well as that of the Maryland State Firemen's Association. So those are the things I have relative to the convention. It's a pleasure to serve as your chair. And again, I want to thank the entire committee because they did a phenomenal job this year. And you all be safe and see you next trip.
Walk out in the middle of the stage there for me? Yes. I'm asking Chief Sarnicki to walk out. You don't realize the work that he's done for the NAAA, which is the Fallen Firefighters Memorial up in Emmitsburg. He'll be leaving that position at the end of this year, but he's done a stellar job. If anyone has ever seen that service up in Emmitsburg or been a part of that, this man here helps make that run. And the reason why he wasn't here at the beginning of the week, that the National Fire Protection Agency awarded Ron for this year the James M. Shannon Advocacy Medal, which honors individuals for ferventy, for being a champion for fire service and advocacy around the United States. So Ron, congratulations and best of luck in your new endeavors. Ron Sarnicki. So we're getting closer to the close and the hot dogs. So is there any unfinished business that we need to address? Yes, sir. Yeah, there should be a mic. Okay. Please state your name, where you're from, sir.
My name is Andrew B. White. I'm a life member of the Kensington Volunteer Fire Department, and I'm a delegate from the Bethesda Fire Department, both in Montgomery County. And I rise to finish business from last year's meeting and make a motion to remove from the table the motion that I made last year, which appears on page 159 in last year's proceedings book, and I ask for a second.
So there's a motion on the floor. I have a second. All those in favor, signify by saying aye. Opposed? Abstentions? With the motion was to remove your. I don't. Can you read what your?
The motion is to remove from the table the motion that was made last year.
What was your motion last year, though?
Well, we have to remove it from the table in order to talk about it.
Okay. No. You didn't know what it is.
Okay, well, I have it, but the secretary should have it available. And the motion from last year reads as follows: that the resident agent presently on record with the state of Maryland as Michael Farlow, or the secretary of the Maryland State Firemen's Association, MSFA, take the appropriate action to file with the Maryland State Department of Assessments and Taxation the required documents in support of a doing business as DBA designation, and that the respective documents identify the MSFA as follows: Maryland State Firemen's Association, MSFA, doing business as Maryland State Firefighters Association, MSFA. That was the motion. And that subsequent to such filing, the resident agent or secretary, as appropriate, confirm the acceptance and registration of the DBA designation. Following the registration, the recorded designation shall be used for MSFA correspondence, public reference, and generally when communicating the organization's name. This is in order. I hear people in the back saying it's out of order. It is not. Mr. Brooks confirmed it's in order last year, and it was tabled. And I have had a motion on the floor today to remove it from the table for further discussion, deliberation, and action.
So we had a motion. Do I have a second on that? Second. All those in favor? Okay. Any discussion? Anyone opposed? Just call for opposition. That was opposition. Yeah. No.
Mr. President.
Opposition. So the
Mr.
motion
President,
fails.
I would ask that you acknowledge that the people who are voting are delegates, and that they be counted in reference to removing it from the table. Have we removed it from the table or not? You haven't rendered a ruling on it. If you have, then we can continue talking about it.
Yeah. That's a 4 vote. So, so the motion's failed. So
I'm not following you, sir. We have everybody in the audience here saying aye, but we have not identified them as delegates. The only people who should be saying aye are delegates, or in their absence, alternates.
okay, hang on a minute. Yeah.
All right, Mr. President, hi, how are you?
Good morning, sir.
Okay, so what I heard was the president called to take it off the table. I heard an aye vote and I heard negative votes, and he chose to accept the floor vote. I hear you challenging that vote by delegates. All right, is that correct?
That's correct.
All right, so Mr. President, what I would suggest is you have the delegates, the registered delegates stand and take that vote a second time.
Thank you, Mr. Parliamentarian.
All right, so if you're a registered delegate for your department, so we have a motion on the floor so all those in favor of the motion signify by saying aye or raise your hand so I can see how much. Okay. All those opposed? No. Abstentions?
No.
So the no vote passes, sir. Any other new business? Any other new business? Come to the mic.
Good morning, Mr. President. Tom Mattingly Jr., Leonardtown Volunteer Fire Department, Second Vice President of Southern Maryland Volunteer Firemen's Association. We'd like to first say that the name change has been going on now for 3 years. This thing needs to be put to rest. It's been voted down 2 years in a row now. With that said, we'd like to see any and all name change proposals be tabled for the next 5 years, and at the end of that 5 years, a reassessment of the name change occur to include all legal and financial aspects that would affect the association.
So if I understand your motion, you want a motion that we not have a name change for the next 5 years.
Correct. We would table any and all name changes, bylaw changes, or proposals for the next 5 years.
Okay. Do I have a second on that motion? The parliamentarians got the shepherd's hook out here, so.
I'm sorry, let me get this straight. Where are you?
It's over there.
Hi, good morning. Okay, I understand you are making a motion to preclude any requested name changes or anything like that moving forward for 5 years. Is that correct?
Correct. With also a reassessment of the name change in 5 years, and with that reassessment, a report on all of the financial and legal ramifications to the association with any type of change.
So my problem I'm having reconciling that is we're altering the bylaws and we're taking away the responsibility or the power of the individual delegate from governing the association. I have concerns about doing that.
Okay, I mean, it's just, we're at a point with this. This is going to keep going on every year, and it needs to rest for a while. It needs some time for it to soak in with everybody. Nobody really got their way with this whole vote on this name change, and I think the proof of that was in the numbers that were presented after the election. It's time for this to sit and take a rest for a while. And like I said, everybody needs to just let it soak in, and take 5 years. There's nothing wrong with taking 5 years and doing a reassessment of everything, and have this thing done the right way. Because quite frankly, the way this whole proposal has gone down from the get-go has been done wrong. So that's our opinion and motion from somebody.
I'm precluded from offering the opinion on that or the support of that. I have to offer my opinion to the president on the process. So the process is where I have concern. I'm more than willing to have that dialogue. I will bring that up again at the executive committee at 1 o'clock so that we can move forward with that emotion. If you are available at 1 o'clock, I would suggest you be there as well.
I will be there.
Thank you.
Thank you.
All right, and I can't see who you are, so look for me and, oh, hi, Tom, I'm sorry, okay. All right, Mr. President.
Thank you. I got to go to the big guns when I got to ask questions, so I'll make sure we're doing this right.
Mr. President, I have further unfinished business. So last year, subsequent to the motion that we just deliberated on slightly after it did not get removed from the table, and quite frankly, the hands should have been counted versus accepting the voice vote again with hands raised. But I'm not going to squabble over that at this point. The bylaws of the mayor, I'm going to read the statement that also appears in the preceding book last year on page 161. And it reads as follows. The bylaws of the Maryland State Firemen's Association say that the executive committee and the elected officers shall manage the affairs, and the executive committee shall transact all business of the MSFA requiring action between annual conventions and conferences. And based upon that section of the bylaws, I make a motion as delegate from Bethesda Fire Department, Andrew B. White, that the executive committee take this matter that has just been tabled, or remains on the table, up at the next executive committee meeting and transact the business to effect that change. To counter what Mr. Mattingly said, 652 people or 652 votes were cast yesterday in favor of changing the name from firemen to firefighters. 525 voted against that, which means the majority of the voters wanted that change. It was not 2/3, so it could not affect the bylaws. But the majority of the votes cast were in favor of changing the name from firemen to firefighters. And as for trying to make motions to modify the rights of the members that are outlined in the bylaws, that is clearly out of order, and at the executive committee today, it should not be entertained. Thank you. I ask for a second to my motion.
No. I think your motion's out of order. I think, I understand the issue with the name change, the executive board and the leadership. We understand where folks fall with that. It is up to the individual members to make that decision on whether or not they want to continue with that. And we will continue to move in that direction. That's going to benefit our organization.
Remember that word, benefit our organization. Thank you.
Yes, sir.
Mr. President. Mr. President.
Yes, sir.
I know there's past President Tom Mattingly, Sr. I know there's a lot of strong feelings on both sides of this particular issue that we brought to a ballot this year, and according to our bylaws, did not move forward. But I think it's certainly an inappropriate time to bring any type of future changes to the name of the association before the members of the association, when they can't be here to represent their opinions. We've got a tropical storm going, we've canceled a parade, our attendance here is practically nothing, and it's certainly an inappropriate time to even consider any type of action like we're doing. We have a full year for the executive committee to work through the process, but let's do it in a fair manner when we have a full hall, when we have all of our members here. They were here to vote. They voted not to accept the change of the name. Let's live with it for a year, and if we're going to come back and reconsider that, that's fine. But certainly today is not an appropriate time to be considering any type of action like that.
Well, I certainly understand what the weather is, and we made that decision in the interest of people's safety, but it's also the responsibility of the delegates to be here in the room while we're still in session. So with that in mind, we will not have any other further discussion. We'll continue to have an open dialogue as the year goes forward, and we will see where it falls. Any other unfinished business? Any other unfinished business? Any new business? And I will recognize past President Joel McCray.
Thank you, Mr. President. Good morning. It has been my honor to have served this organization for many years, and it was definitely my honor and privilege to have served this organization as an officer and a president. I now look forward to the opportunity to continue to serve this organization. So at this convention, I am announcing my candidacy for the position of trustee. So I look forward to your support. I look forward to working with you, and hope everybody has a safe and uneventful travel home today. Thank you.
And I'll also bring out Mr. Harvey Woods.
Thank you, Mr. President. Good morning. I think a few of you in the room know me. Those of you that don't, Harv Woods, currently the chair of the Constitution and Bylaws Committee, the MSFA. I was first appointed to a committee in this organization in the late 1970s. I've been here ever since. Serving this organization is both a privilege and a responsibility, something I live up to. I am, with that in mind, announcing that I will be a candidate for the office of trustee in 2024. I urge you all to come back to the next convention. Thank you.
Thank you, Harvey. Is there any other new business? Any other new business? All right, Mitch, you ready for the raffle? All right. Yeah, I got to bring the tickets up, so give them a minute. Okay. Yeah, got to add the last ones that they sold this morning. Where's our fire ambassadors? On the way. Okay. I'm going to bring back to the microphone our Finance Secretary, Mitch Vogt.
Not quite as tall. Good morning, everyone. The raffle report for last year, which is completed, is on page 83 in your program book. Now, moving forward, as of last evening, we had $43,548 turned in. That's $4,771 less than last year. We did lose one day at Sunfest due to weather. Auxiliaries, I met with them this morning. So far, they have turned in $5,587. And each year, whatever they sell goes towards the new president's vehicle for the ladies. So that's an account that we keep putting money into. I want to thank Jeff Guyman, Willard Evans as my co-chairs, Bonnie Hayden as our auxiliary liaison. I also want to thank everyone that came down to Springfest and Sunfest that helped, and the rest of my committee. And I want to thank all the companies that did participate. So at this time, we would like to get the first place winner drawn. As we tell them, it's got to be someone. And here comes the big bucks. Yeah, start off with the fire company. Allegheny County, Bedford Road. That's good, no taxes. Ticket number was 9858. And that was for the 10,000. Okay, second prize, 2,500. Ticket numbers 28213. Sandra Walsh. It is a Maryland area code. Third place, 1,500. Ticket 147963. No jokes. His name is Joe Butt, B-U-T-T. 301 area code. Okay, this is someone that I didn't thank. However, Singerly Auxiliary sold $2,000 worth of tickets. One of them, their sisters, Nancy Trago, from Singerly Auxiliary. And that was 1,000. Okay, $750. Ticket number 31441. Just has the name of Stu. STEW. Is that a good all or a bad all? Another familiar name, number 6, Bill Hildebrand. Ticket 126960. That was 500. Good job, Bill. No taxes. Number 7, $250, another fire company, Frederick County, Junior Fire Company number 2. Ticket is 39883. $100, number 8, Kevin Baker. Ticket number is 123806, 505 area code. Okay, 9th place, $100. Bert, B-E-R-T, 412 area code, ticket 99936. Well, we have another member. This one's on the executive committee. It is marked the Dayton's Western Port. Ticket number is 83611, $100. Okay, at this time, President Smothers is here, and he's got his money out, just like I have his 200 tickets here. As we always do, this is the official start of next year's raffle. So here's your 200 tickets, and here's my $100. I like that. Okay, we're started. And I have next year's tickets downstairs. The auxiliary already has their tickets. They're being distributed. I'm going to have the executive committee pick their county tickets up, and then they will have them starting this afternoon. All right, thank you. Thank you for your participation. And we need to sell a lot of tickets next year so we can get this raffle back up where it used to be.
Thank you, Mitch, and thank you, young ladies. These are our new fire ambassadors. Let's give them a big round of applause. They're going to be busy next year, so thank you, ladies. Yes, sir. Thank you, guys. All right, we're just about done, and I'll bring Chaplain Long back out to send us on our way. I want to say that we're looking forward to a great year here. Our emphasis are really going to be on recruitment and retention and retaining our folks and bringing new people along, as well as our mental health, as we talked about that at the convention for the last couple days. We really need to pay attention to our folks and make sure they're doing well as our youth, our kids. If you have children at home, the exposure that they see us go through affects them as well. And I'm committed to making sure that their mental well-being is going to be good too. So we have health care clinicians ready to assist whenever you need it. I look forward to getting around the state and getting to meet a lot of you at your stations and county associations. Please, if you have anything that you want to bring up, please don't hesitate to give me a call, shoot me an email. I wish everyone well, safe travels back home with the weather today. You get one day back. As we said, we canceled the parade today in the interest of safety. So I wish you safe travels in the next year, and thank you for your support. and Chaplain Long. The extra books that were back in the corner are now downstairs in the lobby, so help yourself on the way out. Good reading material back at your fire station, so Chaplain Long.
Well, I'm a Roth, yeah.
Sorry, they didn't tell me which one was coming up. So.
No problem. Let us pray. Dear Lord, we thank you for this day. It has been good to be together. And we pray that you would bless this association. Bless our president, our first vice president, our second vice president, and all the officers. Continue to guide us and direct us and help us. We pray for each company in this state that you would be with them and bless them and keep them safe. Help us, Lord, with our retention, that we might try to find someone who could come and serve you and serve the fire department. Continue to guide us and direct us. And we ask these things in the name of the Father, of the Son, and of the Holy Spirit. Amen.
Ladies and gentlemen, safe travels and on your way back home, and we are adjourned.